When Sophie Cunningham grabbed that pen and signed property of Sophie Cunningham across JC Sheldon's rookie card, she wasn't just signing an autograph, she was delivering a public execution that had been months in the making. This single moment exposed everything wrong with how the WNBA has handled its biggest star, and why sometimes justice comes with a Sharpie instead of a whistle. The story everyone's talking about didn't start at that autograph table. It started with a pattern that's been eating at basketball fans all season long. Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA as the
Sophie commits a hard foul on JC Sheldon. Again, as JC Sheldon is going up for a layup, Sophie,
the most watched rookie in league history, bringing sellout crowds and record television ratings everywhere she went. But instead of protection befitting a generational talent, she got treated like target practice by players desperate for their 15 minutes of fame. Every game became an episode of How Many Cheap Shots Can We Get Away With, starring guards who figured out that going after Clark was their fastest path to social media relevance. The officials seemed
bear hugs her and takes her to the ground. What I will say is Sophie did not grab her
content to let it happen, treating obvious fouls like aggressive defense and letting players build their highlight reels off Clark's bruised ribs. It was a recipe for disaster that had fans screaming at their televisions every single night. Enter JC Sheldon, a role player whose claim to fame was getting shipped between teams faster than Amazon Prime delivery. Drafted 5th overall by Dallas, she couldn't even survive one season
and throw her to the ground. She didn't body slam her. She didn't do anything
before getting traded to Connecticut, then bounced again to Washington. Her basketball resume was thinner than tissue paper, but she had apparently studied the How to Get Famous by Fouling Caitlin Clark playbook to perfection. The breaking point came during that circus of a game where everything went sideways. Marina Mabrey had already tried out for the NFL by truck-sticking Clark after the whistle, but before that disaster, Sheldon was busy testing boundaries with the kind of accidental contact that always seemed to find its way to Clark's body. It wasn't basketball, it wasn't defense, it was a calculated decision to make herself relevant by making Clark uncomfortable. Sophie Cunningham was taking notes the entire time. While other teammates stood around looking decorative, Sophie was cataloging every bump, every shove, every unnecessary bit of contact that had nothing to do with playing basketball. She wasn't just watching her teammate get targeted, she was building a case, and court was about to be in session. Later in that same game, Sophie delivered her opening statement, a clean, firm reminder that landed in Sheldon's shoulder blades with the force of a freight train. It wasn't dirty, wasn't reckless, wasn't the kind of play that gets you ejected. It was the basketball equivalent of "we see what you're doing, and it stops now." The message was crystal clear: targeting Caitlin comes with interest, and Sophie Cunningham is the collector. But Sophie wasn't done building her case. Most players would have left it on the court, maybe.
My personal opinion, maybe I'm biased here, but I'm gonna give you guys my straight
exchanged some words in the tunnel and moved on. Sophie had bigger plans. She was about to turn a fan event into a masterclass in psychological warfare that would have opposing guards checking their rearview mirrors for the rest of the season. Fast forward to what should have been a routine Fever fan event. Sophie's doing her community service, signing programs and chopping it up with fans who showed up hours early just to meet their heroes. The atmosphere is relaxed, friendly, the kind of event that builds lifelong connections between players and the people who pack the arenas night after night. Then came the moment that broke the internet. A fan slides over a JC Sheldon rookie card, probably expecting a standard signature, maybe a heart or Sophie's jersey number. Instead, they got front row seats to the most savage autograph in WNBA history. Sophie takes the card, grabs the pen, and writes across the front in bold letters, "Property of Sophie Cunningham." The building erupted. Lexi Hull, sitting right next to Sophie, dissolved into laughter while fans lost their collective minds. It wasn't just funny, it was a declaration of war wrapped in humor, delivered with the kind of confidence that only comes from someone who backs up their words with production on the court. What made the moment perfect was Sophie's commitment to the bit. No backpedaling, no "I was just kidding." Damage control, no notes app apology 3 hours later. Sophie leaned into it completely, owning the energy and the message behind it. That's what separates real enforcers from pretenders. They don't just throw the punch, they stand behind it when the cameras are rolling. The clip hit social media like a nuclear bomb. Black Belt Barbie started trending, a reference to Sophie's martial arts background and her ability to deliver devastating blows with a smile. Memes flooded timelines faster than anyone could count them. Fever fans treated it like their personal Super Bowl victory, finally seeing someone publicly stand up for their franchise player in a way that couldn't be ignored or brushed
Straight up honest opinion on this. She bear hugged her, took her to the ground. Yes, it was intentional.
aside. But here's what made Sophie's response so brilliant. It wasn't coming from some end-of-bench enforcer whose only job is to collect fouls and technical. Sophie has been producing at an elite level, especially since the All-Star break. She's been torching nets, stepping into threes like she owns the arc, and stacking 15, 18, 20-point nights while playing the role of Clark's bodyguard. When the Fever needed buckets against Phoenix, Sophie delivered 18 points on command while half her teammates forgot what city they were playing in. This is the difference between empty tough guy posturing and legitimate enforcer energy. Sophie isn't just talking, she's walking, running, and occasionally sprinting past defenders while making sure nobody takes liberties with her teammate. That combination of production and protection is exactly what championship teams are built on. The dominoes fell exactly how Sophie planned them. The autograph became a meme that transcended basketball, reaching casual fans who don't normally follow the WNBA but respect players who stand up for their teammates. Fever fans embraced it as official team canon. Clark's army of supporters saved it to their camera rolls and shared it across every platform they could find. Even neutral observers who were tired of watching Clark get targeted nodded in approval and hit the share button. Meanwhile, JC Sheldon's public image was moving in the exact opposite direction. Her biggest headlines weren't about breakout scoring performances or defensive masterpieces. They were about taking cheap shots at Caitlin Clark and getting publicly roasted by Sophie Cunningham. In a league where storylines matter as much as statistics, that's not the narrative any player wants attached to their name. The beauty of Sophie's approach is how it changes the entire mental calculus for opposing players. It's one thing to deliver a cheap shot when you think nobody's going to challenge you. It's completely different when you know Sophie Cunningham is watching film, taking notes, and planning your public humiliation. That psychological edge is worth its weight in gold, especially for a team trying to protect its most valuable asset. What Sophie did also sent shockwaves through locker rooms across the league. Every team with a star player was watching, taking notes on how to handle similar situations. Every role player thinking about making their name by targeting superstars was suddenly doing cost-benefit analysis on whether 15 minutes of fame was worth becoming Sophie Cunningham's next victim. This wasn't just about one bump or one shove between two players. This was about a season's worth of accumulated frustration finally getting a public return address. It was about establishing that Caitlin Clark isn't running solo anymore, and that anyone who wants to test that theory is going to have to go through Sophie first. That message resonated far beyond Indiana, changing conversations in every WNBA city about player protection and teammate accountability. The timing couldn't have been more perfect either. The WNBA is experiencing unprecedented growth, largely thanks to Clark's impact on ratings and attendance, but that growth means nothing if the league's biggest draw is getting targeted every night by players who see controversy as their ticket to relevance. Sophie's response showed there's a line in the sand, and crossing it comes with consequences that extend far beyond the final buzzer. Social media became the battleground where this story really exploded. Clips of the autograph signing racked up millions of views across platforms, with fans creating reaction videos, breakdown analyses, and tribute montages celebrating Sophie's savage move. The property of Sophie Cunningham phrase became a rallying cry for Fever fans and a warning shot for anyone thinking about testing their team's enforcer. The ripple effects are still being felt throughout the league. When teams face the Fever now, they know they're not just playing against Caitlin Clark and her supporting cast. They're playing against a squad that has officially designated Sophie Cunningham as their enforcer, and she's proven she's willing to take that responsibility seriously both on and off the court. What makes Sophie's brand of enforcement so effective is the balance she strikes between intimidation and entertainment. She's not trying to hurt anybody or start bench-clearing brawls. She's establishing boundaries with style, humor, and just enough edge to make opponents think twice. That's the kind of personality the WNBA needs more of. Players who can protect their teammates while building their own brand in the process. The JC Sheldon incident also highlighted something deeper about team chemistry and loyalty in professional sports. Championship teams don't just have talented players, they have players willing to sacrifice for each other, take charges for each other, and yes, sign autographs that publicly embarrass opponents who cross the line. Sophie's response showed she's built for that kind of team-first mentality. Looking ahead, this moment has permanently changed how opponents approach games against Indiana. Every guard who previously saw Clark as an easy target now has to factor Sophie Cunningham into their game plan. Every cheap shot artist thinking about building their highlight reel off questionable fouls now knows there's video evidence that Sophie keeps receipts and isn't afraid to cash them in publicly. The property of Sophie Cunningham moment wasn't just about one player putting another in their place. It was about establishing a new standard for how teams protect their superstars, how enforcers operate in the social media age, and how public humiliation can be more effective than technical fouls when it comes to changing behavior. As the season moves forward, every Fever game becomes must-watch television, not just for Clark's brilliance, but for Sophie's enforcement. Fans are watching to see if opponents will test the boundaries again, and if Sophie will continue building her collection of publicly embarrassed rivals. That kind of storyline is exactly what the WNBA needs to keep growing its audience and maintaining the momentum Clark's arrival created. The message Sophie sent reverberates beyond basketball courts and into the broader conversation about respect, loyalty, and standing up for teammates. In a league still fighting for mainstream recognition, personalities like Sophie Cunningham, who can back up their words with production and entertainment value, are worth their weight in championship trophies. When Sophie wrote "Property of Sophie Cunningham" on that rookie card, she wasn't just signing an autograph, she was authoring the next chapter of NBA enforcement, proving that sometimes the best defense comes with a pen, a smile, and the absolute certainty that crossing her teammates means crossing her. And in Sophie Cunningham's world, that's a line nobody should be stupid enough to cross.